Katie's our special guest today. She joins us from the PSIA Northwest divisional staff. And I am going to pause right there, and we're going to go over just a couple of items of business, and then I'll pop back over to Katie here. So before we get started, I want to offer a quote for today. First, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you whether you're inspired or not. Habit will help you finish and polish your stories. Inspiration won't. Habit is persistence in practice. That's from Octavia Butler. All right. A couple of business items. Again, you can find previous recordings in the folder. And the folder is linked to the PSIA Northwest events calendar. So you can go in there any Friday afternoon that you see that event listing, that will bring you to the folder, and everything is listed there. We are working on just making a couple of small adjustments, but if you need help, please ask. Kirsten or I is happy to get back to you if you're looking for a specific recording, and or if you wanted some notes from a certain episode, no problem, we're happy to help. Right. And then also speaking to the future, next week, we're going to take a week off. Enjoy the holiday weekend, however that looks, backyard camping, to the lakes, whatever you're doing. So no show next week. July 10th, we're going to have Nick Alfieri on. He is from the ASI National Snowboard Team. He will also be sticking to the same subject of people skills. He'll be talking a little bit about burnout and empathy exhaustion and some other topics that I think are totally on par with what we've been talking about the last few weeks, and will pair nicely with what we'll be talking about today. All right. So coming back to Katie, thank you so much for being here. I feel like this is such a treat. Katie, I'm going to go ahead and be bold and say Katie's a good friend of mine, but also she's been in regular attendance. So something that's really unique to this experience is she is totally privy to everything that we've been doing up until this point. So she has a keen eye to what we've really been focusing on here. So thank you for taking the time to share your expertise, and also for investing in the show. Like I mentioned earlier, Katie is at Mount Hood Meadows. She is an instructor and trainer there. She is on staff with PSIA Northwest as a divisional trainer, and also has her CS2, right? Her senior specialist 1, her freestyle specialist 1, her USSA level 100, and she is on the National People Skills Task Force. And she comes with a ton of passion for the quality, I love it, for the quality of the experience. And that's something that, whether I'm in a clinic with her or taking a clinic from her, or being a part of an educational experience with Katie, that is really noticeable to me. So today we're going to be diving in, and we're going to be talking about practicing people skills. We've learned all of this information, and we've been thinking about, gosh, what is this going to look like in an exam? How do I apply this within my school? What does it look like on the, when I'm out on the snow teaching, giving a clinic or teaching a lesson? How do I do that? And how do I start practicing so that it is a habit? And it's part of who I am, and not something that feels maybe inauthentic, or something that I'm borrowing from someone else all the time, something that's actually mine. Right? So Katie, I would love to just start just a little bit with, just give us a brief of what it's been like serving on the task force for the people skills for you, and then we can fold into what some of those people skills look like.
Yeah, first, I have been extremely honored to be invited on the task force. I'm the only non-national team member at this point. So talking about people skills and self-reflection, it was super intimidating to go to my first meeting with that crew, Jennifer Simpson, Ann Shorling, Josh Fogg, and Nick, and sit at a dinner room table with them in Colorado and work through the origins of the performance guide and get acquainted with the material. And I've really appreciated the methodical and very thoughtful process they've gone through in creating the initial performance guide, which is going to be used by the examiners. It kind of sets out the level 1, level 2, level 3 expectations through people skills. And I think through the very purposeful conversations we've had as a group, we've actually been better able to define what the people skills look like in practice. So that's been huge for all of us, and I think it'll really benefit the membership.
Awesome, thank you. One of the things that I'm hearing as a theme from all of our guests on the task force or not, who are speaking to this topic, is that so we're learning this together, and we're learning what this looks like in real time. So by showing up here or doing the work in this moment, over the summer of 2020 and moving even into this next season, is that there's not a single person or even a team that knows what this is supposed to look like. And I think it's really special to be hearing some of these teachings and some of these transferable skills being offered to try out, and knowing that they may not work. Yeah. And that's part of the excitement. That's some of the excitement that I like to bring to this experience as well. So let's dive in. I know that I really want to narrow it a little bit more on, like, how do we grow these skills? Like, there's all these cool things that we're seeing referenced in the Teaching Snow Sports Manual, and whatnot, but how do we actually grow them? And I'd love to just dive right into, let's talk about Apres listening.
Yeah, and Melodie, if I can talk to, start us off with a little bit of mindset first, because that makes all the difference in the world. So just emphasizing these are skills that we can grow and learn. So just like skiing, we learn these skills by doing. Just like skiing, we're not going to get them right or perfect the first time. So it may feel awkward. It is going to feel awkward. It may feel like you're borrowing from something that's not true to you. That is okay. I think we're used to that from a technical aspect as we incorporate new skills in our skiing or our riding, but it's harder to do with the people skills because some of us take that at such a personal level and feel like how we act is foundational to who we are, and that blocks us sometimes from growing. So just setting that context for, if you think with an open mind and you're like, this isn't going to feel good, but I'm going to do it anyway, I feel like that sets us up for a lot better opportunity for growth.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So on the active listening front, one of the main things I think that I take to heart in this is really listening with curiosity to understand. If anybody's ever read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the first seek to understand, then be understood. That is something I think about daily as I'm interacting with people. And it's really the focus on seeking to understand. So one of the things I think when people first jump into that active listening piece is they read, oh, I'm supposed to just repeat back what the person said to me. And a lot of times that, if done wrong, can lead to superficial listening where you're just parroting back in the exact same words. So I would challenge everyone here to actually listen with curiosity, and then if you are sharing back, share back with your own words. And that shows you've actually synthesized what the person is sharing with you or has said. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, then, keep going.
Katie, what happens if I get it wrong? So when I was just listening to you talk about, I heard you say, what if you're just parroting, right? So what if I'm sitting here thinking about, oh gosh, well, I need to repeat what she's saying, right? Or how can I show her that? And I get it wrong. And I say, oh, so you mean I shouldn't repeat what the person says?
Yeah, and I would say maybe getting it wrong is too strong a language. So you may do that initially. That might be your first step in active listening. But as you continue to grow your skills, one cue for yourself is to notice, reflect as the person's talking. Mm-hmm. Oh, is my focus more on me or is my focus on them? That's a good internal checkpoint. And if your focus is more on them, that probably means you're listening and synthesizing what they're saying, versus if your focus is more on you, that means you're probably listening to speak next or to respond. So I would say give yourself space, like maybe parroting is that first step, but realize that is only the first step and you need to move beyond that to have true active listening.
Awesome.
Yeah. And Melody, one thing to add there in talking with Anne, she wanted me to bring up as well, like body language is an important part of active listening too. So that mirroring, I know you talked about body language last week, but mirroring what the person who you're talking to, their body language. If they're leaning in and you're really engaged in the conversation, you'll lean in. Tone, volume. So those things can really matter as well. It's not just what you say back, it's how you act.
Awesome. For those of you who are interested, last week's recording, so that would be from June 19th, we did an episode fully focused on nonverbal communication, and and takes the information in this Teaching Snow Sports manual and extends it quite a ways within the core topics that are offered within the manual about things like hand gestures and what they mean and where do they happen, and mirroring and the physical movement. So to pair off of what Katie's talking about here, giving you a little bit more of like an instructional based and kind of a how to apply if you're interested in going back and listening to that. Awesome. Thank you for that. I love that got brought up and reiterated, and how I agree, like so often, I mean, we think about like disruptive communication, because if I'm sitting here like this, you know, and leaning back, like I can only imagine the stories that would be going through your head, and what that tells your brain, and then how easy that is to derail you potentially. And thinking about this, like if the objective is to move towards a trust-based relationship, how quickly that just sends us off in a new direction. Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Awesome. So so what next? So if we're talking about like, how do we practice that? So how do I practice this active listening? Like, what would it look like in like maybe doing this with a friend, or finding another instructor, or someone, like who do I do this with? What does it look like? Talk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think the environment really matters. So as you were saying, like don't just go out necessarily and try new things with strangers, because that ups the stakes of you feeling potentially embarrassed with anything that's awkward, and knowing that it's likely going to be awkward. You probably don't want to put yourself in that position. So if you're in a group of peers or you're with friends, just practicing those skills, and maybe even being transparent ahead of time, saying, you know, look, I've been attending these people skills Friday seminars. They're really interesting. I've realized, you know, active listening is something I really need to work on. So just be aware I'm going to be trying that out with you over the next few months. And then that helps as well. So the person knows what's going on in your head and isn't misreading your changes in behavior, because they're used to you acting how you normally act. So that sets you up for a better level of success.
Awesome. I like that. And I mean, heck, use your friends, right? That's fabulous. Right? I like that. Something that I value within that recommendation is you're starting with a trust-based relationship. And ideally, it seems like you have the potential to increase the trust. And I think that's a really nice indicator. And then the ability to receive feedback. Awesome.
Yeah, the feedback is a big part, and actively asking for that feedback and reflecting on it and incorporating it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that. Good. So tell me a little bit more. Tell me about self-awareness. How do we practice self-awareness? I know we've talked a little bit about this whole thing of like, you mentioned it earlier, like mine and yours. I mean, if you're insulting me and I feel bad, like, wait, isn't that your fault? Tell us more.
So usually I think like self-awareness out of communication and social awareness, like self-awareness tends to be the most difficult because it is the most personal to us. And so this one really requires you to have some dedication to it and not want to just check the boxes to say you're practicing it. I think everybody here, it sounds like, has been reading through the manual. You've read through the reflection exercises that are like, when this occurs, I feel this way. So that's a good step one for self-awareness. I would say the next level beyond that is, as you're going through your day, kind of float above yourself as an observer. Okay, so watch yourself in your interactions with other people. And how this kind of goes is, it's a 3-step process. Somebody acts, you have an emotion. That's not something we're going to be able to stop. We all have emotions. That's not something we're trying to control those emotions or squash those emotions. But after you have your emotional response, insert a stop point right there. And that is the period where, as Anne said, you can test your assumptions. You can recognize what is mine versus what is yours. And then something I really try to practice is viewing things through the lens of best intent. This is really big at where I work. So if something hits me in a negative way and gives me a negative emotion, I try to run through the scenarios in a best case of what that person may be doing. So it's not negative, it's not targeted at me. I may just be taking it that way. So that stop point allows you to quickly do all those things as you practice. It's going to be time consuming initially. And then I think the big thing with that, then it allows you to respond versus react. And that's really what we're going for with that fundamental. So you can manage your actions with other people.
Nice. So I'm almost hearing this like compound effect where active listening and well-practiced self-awareness require this like habitual pause. Like, and I'm thinking of like, how can I do this? Like, what can I, like, to get started, could I like count to 10 on my fingers before I speak and use that time as like allowance to actually have space and time to feel whatever's going on, to even offer oh goodness, the power of pause, and to notice, am I speaking from the emotion that just showed up because of what the person said, or am I responding it and keeping the conversation with the person who just was brave enough maybe to share in that circumstance?
Yeah, and I think initially the pause is going to seem really, really long, and it's going to seem awkward. And this is where, again, practicing with friends, family, coworkers, peers can be really nice. But like, as you get more practice with it, it'll be faster and you will feel less beholden to your emotions. So I think for me, like the thought of being outside of myself and observing myself makes it easier to not want to react immediately. And part of this is a commitment by everybody as you're practicing this to actually be present in the moment, versus if you're on your phone or you're doing something else and somebody says something, what do we have a tendency to do?
Yeah.
We immediately react.
Wow, I'm hearing an additional value, your example of like kind of being a little checked out or being on your phone or whatnot, how much easier it would be to misinterpret something.
Yes.
Or to catch the tail end of something, or to, and to then move into like a heightened emotion that's actually disconnected from the subject, and to move into reacting instead of actually thinking for a moment and running it through that filter of mine versus yours. Oh, that's fabulous.
Exactly. Yep.
I love this. So could you talk to us just a little bit about like, how do I notice if an emotion is bubbling up for me? I mean, you've just told me you hate my shirt, and now I'm angry at you. And so how do I even know
that an emotion is bubbling up? That's one of the hardest things, because we don't know what we don't know a lot of times. So this is, again, where it can be helpful to have trusted friends, partners tell you, hey, I just noticed you're exhibiting the signs of being frustrated. And then being like, instead of saying, no, I'm not, like, thanking them for that and reflecting on how you're feeling in that moment. And we're never through this journey. We all have emotions that we immediately can feel, and then it takes practice to recognize other emotions. And one thing I think can be helpful in this area if people are not very self-aware is potentially taking one of the personality tests. If you're like in the tech companies I've been in, I've run the gamut on these. So Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finders, the Strength Deployment Inventory, like these are all very helpful if you don't know much about yourself, because they tell you kind of where you are on a scale on different things and what your defaults are. And then from what you know about your defaults, then you can figure out, okay, maybe this is a blind spot for me that I really don't know much about. So they can help give you words or additional awareness for areas that you could practice on. So I have found those helpful as well.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Personality tests. Check.
Take them with a grain of salt though, like.
Right.
I have found in all the ones I've done though, there have been definite themes through the last 10 years of all of them. So I would say like none of them have ever said something that wasn't true or part of who I am or how I act.
That's helpful. Jerry Ann, I want to read your chat to everyone. Jerry Ann says, being vulnerable to ask for feedback from people around you. Being open is key. Feedback is a gift. That's well said. Thank you for that. Love that. So I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit more about like, how do I respond to it? Like, especially if it's mine, like, what if I'm the one overreacting to it? Like, how can, like, dig into this a little bit more with me, like this mind stuff. And I mean, especially if you're the one hurting me, I mean, that can't be me. Like, can we talk, let's open up that up a little bit more.
Yeah, and it could be someone had the best of intention as they were interacting with you. And it's yours, it's your response to that. That's seeing them as doing it maliciously to hurt you. So I think that including that pause with the mine and yours is really important. The other thing that is fine and good to practice is if you are in an emotional state where you're not able to respond, you're still in react mode, it's okay. And this is awesome if you can put a name to your emotion and say, I am feeling this way. I need to pause for a moment. Can we come back to this? And then at least you're on that pathway to recognizing what you're feeling, and your response is not escalating the situation. So that's kind of the next step in that.
I like that. Thank you. So, I mean, it almost sounds like a cool off almost. Or a shift or an opportunity to be able to potentially observe whatever emotion is. So if I need 5 minutes to do that, and then ideally over time, as I become more comfortable, maybe I'll need 10 seconds for that. Or if I get escalated, maybe I do need a full 5 minutes. Maybe I need a chairlift ride or two. And then to know that it is safe for me to come back.
And it doesn't always have to be like negative, as Anne shared, like people skills are about gathering information and using that information to build trust. So sometimes what we need with that pause is we're gathering information about our own emotions, the environment around us, our interaction with the person, and maybe we just need a little bit more time to process that, to put the pieces together before we take that next step.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's move on to relationships. I like it. So let's talk a little bit more about like, what does this look like in a relationship with others?
Yeah, this one, some people are stronger in this area than like self-awareness. One of the things that I really like to do when I'm thinking about situational or social awareness when dealing with relationships with others is go and find a place and sit down, be fully present, and just observe the people around me and see if I can pick up on cues in their interactions. with each other. And again, knowing that we never know exactly what's going on in somebody's head, but seeing, like, just like with movement analysis, what are my observations? I'm noticing that these two people are talking, they're both leaned over a table at each other, staring at each other's eyes, they've got smiles on their faces, the tone is soft, like those type of things, being able to observe those individual components as clues to help feed into our assessment. One of the big things here, and again, I was talking with Anna about this, she said, we also have to make sure though that we take the environment into account, because if an individual is hunched over and shivering, that means something completely different if it's a cold, blustery winter day than if it's a warm summer day.
Mm-hmm.
So environment has to be a key component.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love that practice recommendation. So go find a place that has traffic. I'm hearing like coffee shop. I'm hearing anywhere where you can see people mixing, and you can keep yourself at a distance and familiarize yourself with practicing that observation. So I'm likening this. So this sounds like the parallel of standing on the side of the ski slope and watching people go by and picking something that you notice, you know, and then being able to kind of bring that into familiarity, offering it language. That's something that I think is new and unpracticed for many of us, where we don't necessarily know what to call that. That doesn't seem right, but I don't know what it is.
Yes, and one of the big things here, I think, as you're observing, don't just make the checklist, but reflect on the checklist you're running through and see what components you're consistently observing and what ones are missing. So maybe you're a big person who cues into facial expression.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that gives you more data than voice volume and tone. So figure out like what areas you default to, and then try to build the skills on the areas maybe that you're not as in tune into.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Heroes dropped something into the chat here that I want to share for everyone. It's an acronym STOP. Stop, think, observe, proceed, from the inner game of tennis, so skiing, so maybe it's STOS. But to the core, okay, is to work from understand what the other person understands emotionally, and of what we've said or are trying to get across. This is essential to mindset. That's awesome. Thank you, Hero, for dropping that in. This seems to kind of go back to each of these pieces that we've talked about so far. So being conscientious about your mindset and actively listening and even checking for clarification, something that we plug in with our teaching, and making sure that we're not just blazing over anything that we toss out, especially when we're tapping into things that have a previous expectation of being personal, and letting it be a little bit more named. Awesome. This is good. I apologize. I'm checking my notes really quick. So we just have a couple minutes left here, but I really think it's important to talk about judgment and how that applies to, you know, specifically relating with others, but also I think kind of into all of these parts. I feel like so easily self-judgment can show up. So moving from self-awareness and then judging ourselves for that, or for the emotion that's showing up, or for, you know, really fill in the blank. So if you could speak a little bit about judgment and how that applies to this practicing and all the other components that have come into this.
Yeah, specific to self-judgment, I think a lot of times we do ourselves a disservice. There are so many times where I hear people say, well, I'm just this kind of person, or I'm not good at this thing. And by putting ourselves in a box like that, that's a fixed mindset. And we're not allowing ourselves that opportunity for growth. And the growth is scary. I'm not going to discount that. So sometimes just labeling ourselves and staying in our box is the easiest way forward. I think we can also, like, a lot of this stuff requires you to feel safe, especially as we're practicing. A safe psychological environment to build these skills and get that feedback is really important to growing successfully. And I think if we're putting ourselves down, then we're hurting that environment. And so a lot of, like, I talk with people a lot about imposter syndrome. A lot of times when we're someone new, just like me going and working with the national team on this stuff, we have a tendency to make that outsider feeling feel worse. And because of that, we retract and we don't participate, and we feel like we're not worthy, and we feel like we don't belong as part of the group. And I think that's really something that's important to put a name on, because after you put a name on it, you can address it and you can go from it, versus it building on itself and getting worse and worse and worse.
Thank you for that, Katie. I think that it's so important that to keep coming back to recognition is always the first step. I think anytime you look into any kind of help or step programs or anything like that, is point one is recognition. And yeah, thank you. And also thank you for relating that to your own experience. I know that that can be hard. Something I think is really important to be thoughtful about as you begin practicing is find someone you trust and practice building more. And that's something that I feel like we keep coming back to is I know when I hear all of these tools and all of these different things, you know, about emotional intelligence and all these other things, I keep thinking, well, I want to go practice them, but I want to also feel like I want to do these things with somebody I trust as I gain, as I refine my skill set. Love it. Katie, anything else you want to add?
Just that I challenge you all to reflect after this, identify your areas of strength, identify your areas of growth. And what I would really love from this group, as you go out and you kind of spread your love for people skills and your own growth journeys in this areas, if you hear your peers who are interested in growing and learning, if you hear them say, I'm just this kind of person, that's not me, like I'm just not good with names, or I'm not good at building connection with people, point out to them that that is a skill that they can build and help them get to that realization if they're willing.
Well said. Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. Thanks for your time and thanks for being here. Just one more reminder, we're taking next week off. Enjoy the holiday. We'll be back July 10th with Nick Alfieri. As always, if you have questions, please email me. And if you have thoughts or questions or inspirations, please reach out. I want to hear from you. It's never a bother. And yes, Eugene, I love this response of it's in the future. I'm not good at adding yet. I will be good at. It's in the future. Thank you for that. Awesome. All right, signing off. Enjoy your weekends, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.